All right, so this is the third video. So we just then created in the previous video, created a database helper class. We set up some constants, including a SQL database creation string that had the entries based on a command that we will execute from a method called exec SQL that I showed in the previous video, which was right here, exec SQL, and we use the create table option for that. Okay, so what we want to do is add the code now to actually use this stuff. All right, so inside our database helper class, what we want to do is go into the constructor, and we want to set up the constructor super call with our current now strings that we just created. And then I'll introduce a method that we can use to see some debug prints. Okay, so what we have here in the database helper constructor is our a bunch of parameters, right? What we only need at this point is our context going in there, and the context again is kind of like the characteristic of our class as we move between activities. So I'm going to just shorten this this list to context. It's of type context, and it's the context, and I'll talk about context in class as well. But under then the super call, so it's going to be calling the SQLite open helper. We have context. And then under name, we want the database name. So I'm going to copy that and put it into the name field. Under factory, we don't care about that at this point. That's for testability if you were to, again, publish this out to the Play Store. And then for database, the version I want is going to be the database version. So I'm going to open this guy, or copy that database version and then put it in there. Okay, so now I have my my constructor set up, and then what I want to do is I want to put this method called logd. So this will allow us to print some messages out to the screen when we're running. Otherwise, we don't see a whole lot. You can't do like printfs to the console. So you do essentially that using this logd. It's basically like a debug logger is what it stands for. So I'm going to give it you have to give it two things. The first is a tag for your for whatever it is that you want to print out. We want to put a tag in there because we want to filter those. Otherwise, you just get inundated by a bunch of different messages, and so you want to be able to filter those in. So I'm going to call this my contact app, and then the second one is what you're going to actually print out. So you could put in variables or just messages. So in this case here, I'm going to say database helper. So this is from my database helper class, and then I'm just going to give a message. I'm going to say I've constructed the database helper. Right? So just going to say something there that will print out to my Android screen when I have my phone connected, so that I can see that I actually got to this point. Okay. I have an error here that doesn't know what log is, so I need to resolve that, and I use the quick fix. Again, it's Alt-Enter for the PC, or Control, or what was it, Option-Enter? Option-Enter for the Mac. And you can see it imports this log class so that we can log those messages. All right, so now we got that. The constructor's there. Now we want to set up for the onCreate call. And again, I want to put another logd message in here, but I will do this. I will say first, I'm going to call and I'm going to give it db dot, and I haven't instantiated it yet, but we'll do that in just a second in the main activity. But I'm going to say db dot and then exec SQL. So it's the exec SQL that I just showed right here. Okay, this is the method that we're going to call, and so we'll call that, and I want to call that with my string that I set up previously, the SQL entry. So you could do this manually just by putting in all this stuff, create table plus your table name plus the parentheses and your ID and all that stuff. But I'm just going to do this with my string. That way if I change this, which you guys will do, you can just change it up here and then you can use your same on create. All right, I'm going to add another logd message so that I know that I got at least to this point. What you're going to find sometimes is that when you're executing on your phone, you will all of a sudden get a message that says, unfortunately, your Android app has crashed or ended or something like that. So when you crash an app like that, you have no clue what has happened. So in order to kind of narrow down where your problem is, putting in logd messages like these are very helpful because you'll see the printouts on the screen down here on the console, and then you'll see some prints before you actually crash, hopefully, and you'll be able to narrow down, okay, well, what method actually is crashing. Okay, so in this case here, I just copied the one from above. I'm going to use my same tag so that I can filter it, and then I'm going to say, so it's my contact app, and then my message will be, again, I'm inside the database helper class. If I'm in main activity, I would say main activity, right? So it's just a way for me to see what I'm actually, where I'm at and what I'm doing. And on this case here, I'm just going to say that I have creating, or I'm going to say creating or created the database, right? So this is from the onCreate method inside database helper. This is what we're doing. We're creating the database. So I've created, by this time I've created. If I did it before, I would be creating, or I'm about to create that database. Okay, so this is my logd message here. And then I need one more for my on upgrade. And I will pause here, put the code in there, and then resume. Okay, so what I wanted to do here was create the on upgrade. This is to drop the table if you have some sort of upgrade with a database that you're trying to sync with in the cloud. So I went up here, and underneath the SQL create entries, I also created another string, another constant string called SQL delete entries, and that was equal to quote drop table if exists, and I'm going to add to it or concatenate to it and I need a space in there, the table entry or the table name. Okay, so again, it's important that because you're concatenating strings that you have the spaces in here. This is again going back to where we had this exec SQL that we're going to be dropping this table in this case, and then we have the triggers in there. All right, so what we want to do on the upgrade is to execute that method, and it's the database that we're actually creating, and so we'll get that in just a second. And the parameter we want to send to it is SQL delete entries. I'm going to put a logd message in here that I've upgraded the database, and then I call the onCreate method again. This is its onCreate method, or this.onCreate method, so that it recreates the database. Okay, so again, this is if you're upgrading it, you need to drop it because you have done something like modified your database to add a field or something like that. All right. So I think we're done here in the database helper. What we need to do now is go back to main activity, and we need to set up our database helper instantiation. So we need to create the instance of it, and so we can declare it, and then we want to instantiate it in the onCreate method, and then we want to try to run that app. Okay, and I'll show you how we can see if a database has actually been created in it, and if it's crashed or not, I guess, is what we want to check out. All right, so inside our main activity, what we want to do is up on top for an instance variable, we want to call, we have a database helper type, and I'm going to call it myDB. That's my database. And then underneath where we have the onCreate, we have the call to our parent class. I'm going to put a logd message in here, log.d, and I'm going to call this, it's my contact app again. And in this case here, I'm in my main activity, and I'm going to just say I'm setting up the layout. Okay, so when you do this thing called set content view, and you're using this r dot layout dot activity main, this is actually using the activity main XML file here to set up your layout. And we haven't done anything with the layout yet, but this is where, if we're going to be changing some stuff in here, this is where you're actually going to be utilizing it. You're calling it from your onCreate method. Okay, so I need to put in my log class again. So it is Alt Enter or Option Enter, depending on what computer you have. Okay, so then we have the we're setting up our layout, and I think that's pretty much all we need, except for the instantiation. Here I'm going to call it myDB, and this is going to be equal to a new, and then it's a database helper. This is what our class is, and then I'm going to pass to it the context of this class, right? So this is all of the characteristics of this class go to my database helper in order to create it. All right, and then one more. And I do this because, and I'm going to ask you guys to do this, because if you have something wrong and it crashes your app, like I said before, if you crash your app, I have no way of helping you debug it, and you have no way of really debugging it unless you have some print messages in there, and I'll show you how those are going to show up in just a second. Okay, so I'm going to put a message in here and set up that a message that says we have instantiated the database helper. Okay. Okay, so we set up this logd message that instantiated the database helper. Okay, so what I want to do now is try to run this, and I have the screen up here, and let me see if I can shorten this guy up here. There's my device. There's the screen. All right, and so I run it, and you're not going to see anything again. That's too exciting. There's my device. I hit OK. I'm going to build. You can watch it build in here. It's going to run. Now what I want to do is I want to look at logcat, and I'll see a bunch of just messages here. Here's my my app. It didn't crash, so that's good. If it crashes, you're going to see that unfortunately message in there, and you see a bunch of stuff in here. And what I want to do is I want to filter this. So I'm going to say, and I went to the logcat view here. So down in here, you click on logcat. I click on, we're going to type in my contact app, and then I can see those three messages that I put in there. The main activity, setting up the layout, when I constructed the database helper inside database, and then when I instantiated the database helper inside my main activity. Okay, so I can see all that stuff that happened. So that was all good, and I should have created that database now. Okay, so now what we're going to be able to do is look at files inside the device through Android Studio. We do that by going up to View. So we click on View, and then under Tool, Windows, we go down to where it says Device File Explorer. Inside there, you're going to see a bunch of different path names. The one that we're interested in is the one, so you're going to go into, or you're going to see a bunch of folders first off. You go to where it says Data, so under Data, you open that one up. There's going to be another one under there called Data. Look at the data one there, and then underneath there we want to find our package name. So it's com example, and then mine is Anthony Morrow. So I look for com example. So yours is going to be com example something else, and it's in alphabetical order. So you look at here, com example. Then underneath there, you should have, there'll be like a data folder in there, or databases folder. Inside there, we'll be able to look at our database once we've created it with some fields in it. Okay, and then from there we can save it, and we can view it on an online viewer and see the actual records. Okay, so because we've just set it up, we don't see it yet, but we will. This is where we're going to go when we go to check it out. All right, so that's it for this one. The next thing we're going to be doing is adding more fields, and in fact, your assignment really is to create more fields in this. You just have the ID, and I'm going to ask you to create the phone and the address fields inside here, so you're going to be adding some stuff in here to do that. All right, Okay.